Okay, so here's my standpoint. I believe that eventually, and we are very, very, very on the way to making concepts such as race arbitrary, where it's no longer an issue. Unfortunately, we're still only 50 years from segregation. So, we have a generation, the baby boomers, who grew up in that era, grew up with that oppression, still raising Generation X and influencing the millennials. And since that is coming to an end, and it's not becoming as big of an issue anymore, and it is changing, that generation is dying off, the people that see these kids and see this new generation take things so freely, they're grasping onto that, because for them, they were not able to do that. It is a fear to them. It is something they're like, if they tried that same thing back in their day, they would have severe consequences. And they see all these kids and all these younger generations doing things that would take severe consequences, so they're getting a more extremist perspective out of fear, which is understandable completely, and there's no way you're going to change that. You're just going to have to deal with it till it's over. But, and I hate to say it like that, sounds like a dick move saying you gotta wait for it to die off and wait for them to die off.
It's kind of true though.
But it's true. It's not saying anything against them. I understand why they'd be fearful. If I fucking was a black man and living in fucking 1960 and grew up with that perspective my whole life and prior to 1960 and stuff, and prior to the Civil Rights Act, I would completely understand. But we live in a new generation, and that protective instinct is actually more detrimental to society than it ever is good now. And that's the sad thing, man, because they're not doing it out of malicious intent.
Yeah.
And also, we have government officials that see these extremists and stuff. They know this era is changing, and they've been exploiting this for a while, so they're targeting these extremists and setting up events and exploiting events such as the Baltimore riots, the Charlottesville, exploiting these events to keep this division, because this division allows them to distract citizens from real issues that we could. And it's sad because it's making us take a fucking 15-year step back over, because I want to say probably around the Rodney King beatings is when white progression really, or progression amongst races, white progression, that sounds so bad, well, progression amongst the races really started to take hold, and a lot of stuff, because there was video cameras, so cops couldn't do acts that were uncivil anymore, and civil rights was probably more enforced then than it ever was in 1960, and that's the thing. And we're taking a 15-year step back, 20-year step back towards the end of this era, towards the end of this fucking racial divide, just because it's coming to an end, and there's groups that are afraid they can't exploit it anymore. It's really sad. And yes, I do think it's going to be arbitrary, but for the next probably 10 years, 15 years, we're going to have that stigma. We're going to have to battle through. And that's the thing. The best thing, we got to start educating ourselves on real issues and lose our ego and lose that mindset that they have this image against us, are like they're like this and they're an opposition. We gotta lose it as an opposition, because they're not. They have a perspective because of their lifestyle, like I have a perspective because of mine. And let's be real, more African Americans, more minorities tend to be democratic and liberal. More majority, such as whites, tend to be conservative. But they have that perspective because of the life they lived in. You guarantee, take a white man who grew up in the Great Depression and had a criminal record, he's going to be a little more liberal, because not always, because it might be his upbringing, but his perspective is going to give him a little more liberal perspective, because he hasn't had the same job opportunity. He's been in the same situation as that person. Here's another thing, because there's a big issue, like a lot of African Americans are afraid of authority figures such as cops.
Yeah.
I want to let y'all know something, okay?
We are too.
We are too.
Believe it
I'm
or
a white boy with dreadlocks.
Yeah.
Trust me. And here's why. I'll bring something up. Okay? Because cops, it's not just that And there are a lot of good authority figures, but the problem is you have authority figures who only have 6 months training, and they honestly don't know the law as well as they believe they do. Okay? It's 6 months to enforce the law, 6 years to defend it. There's an issue right there. And that's the problem. It's not a race thing. You have just a lot of fucking young kids that are getting these authority positions, and they get a power trip because they do have a power at that point. And a lot of times you say, well, they have to go against consequences themselves. They can't do anything. Well, when it comes down and there's no other witnesses, guess what? It's their word against yours. And then if you're sitting in the courtroom, who do you think the judge is going to listen to? And I'll say this. The other night, I brought a girl home. She came on her own free will. She came back to my house, stayed the night. She failed to mention, because we were all a little drunk. She failed to mention that to her girlfriends where she was going. They GPS tracked her phone, like good friends should. Yeah. I completely understand. But the cops, and I actually slept through all this. My friend Alan woke up, and everything ended up being cool once they understood the whole situation. But they came in an aggressive manner. They didn't come in a civil manner. They came kicking on the door. Yeah. Kicking on my door, going, "Where's the girl?" And said, "Where's the dope?" I don't even smoke marijuana, surprisingly. And they're out there kicking on my door, automatically looking for an excuse to get another charge and stuff. And one of them was a young officer. This is showing this exploitation of power. So African Americans, nothing against y'all, but you have to see, it's not that they're targeting you. They're targeting anybody that they can get another another charge, build their record. Because if you know how police work, it's military ranked. And the more arrests, the more busts they get, the quicker they get the sergeant, lieutenant. They're fucking what is it? Tag chase? Not tag chasing. They're rank chasing, man. Yeah, and dude, that's why. So, and I'm not saying that all of them are like, I have some good friends that are police officers. A few deputy sheriffs that are great friends of mine. But there's a lot that are young, and they're doing the fuel that ego, man. You don't have a shortage of police officers. If anything, you have guys working at the county jail waiting for a squad car to get, or waiting for a position to open up, and tons of them. It's not a field that's in a shortage. It's an overstocked field. If anything, we need to be weeding it out. Yeah. And I don't want to say it like this, but it's a field that a lot of people go to. It takes 6 months to get. And I'm not saying it's not like hard. I'm not saying you don't have to be intelligent, you don't have to memorize. You do have to, and you get maced. But you're telling me you can do that in 6 months, yet it takes me 2 years or 4 years to get a teaching degree? I'm sorry, man. It's ridiculous. You're knowing just as much information, need to know just as much information, and have just as much training. If I'm having to deal with unruly kids every day, and you're having to deal with unruly people every day, we should have the same. If anything, you should have more. You're carrying a gun.
You're carrying a gun, and you're expected to keep the peace, and you're a symbol of justice. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to be.
And a lot of them, it's like, I forget the dude's name. This was on the news a few years, probably like 4 years back. This has been a while. But this guy was an ex-college basketball player, basketball. He had gotten in a car wreck. This is out in Fayetteville. Got in a car wreck, and he went knocking on people's doors because he was disoriented. His car had just flipped. It wasn't nothing a deer ran out in front of him. It wasn't anything like alcohol induced or anything. He was just knocking on people's doors. Lady, an old white lady, had a bad stigma, and she called the officers. Well, when he saw the officers, he went running up to the officers, and the officers shot him 6 times. 6 times. Now, I could understand if he freaked out, and honestly, they probably couldn't hear each other. It was a miscommunication. And I could understand if the officer freaked out and shot once to stop him, because I guarantee that first bullet dropped him. Yeah. But instead, he shot him 6 times.
There's fear element there.
That, I'm sorry, shows that the officer is ill-trained right there. That he was not able to act calmly and act responsibly with his weapon. He had improper use of equipment right there, and I'm sorry, in my opinion, that's manslaughter. And I mean, here's another thing I'll say. Okay, So a lot of white people have this stigma that African Americans, just because they're black, oh, they're gangbangers, thugs.
Yeah.
Well, you want to know why that is? It goes back to why I said that we're 50 years from segregation. Okay, here's the thing: poverty. When people were segregated, minorities were closer to the poverty line. Actually, a majority of their own race of minorities were under the poverty line. Well, you know what correlates with poverty? Crime. Because when you can't support yourself, can't support your family, you look for a way to do it. And sometimes you don't have the options everyone else does. And the sad part is now they do have those options, but they're still being raised by a generation who didn't.
Yeah.
So that's why, and I'm not going to lie, I have kids I went to school with, man. They still sell pills, sell crack, everything. And they make bank. I ain't even gonna lie. They ride around new rental cars every day. But they don't need to do that anymore. But they have that still in their brain. Fuck school, fuck this, because they're being raised by that generation. And it's a problem that's going to resolve itself. And we're only making the stigma worse, and they're making the stigma worse. Both sides are, because we still believe it. We don't see beyond our own longevity, and that's the problem. But within our lifetime, it'll be at the end of our lifetime. Race isn't going to be an issue. That's the thing, and it shouldn't be.
We get it on.